they make fun of disabled people, they make fun of fat people, they make fun of trans people, and they make fun of women. And those are the places where I sort of draw line. When people's opinions are so widely polarized at a time like this, I don't know if I want to go there and cause weird situations to happen, because it's a lot. It is a lot.
Hello and welcome to the DeadAnt chat room. I'm your host Bhanush Kapoor, and joining us today is Karunesh Talwar. Welcome, Karunesh. How are you this fine pandemic weekend?
I'm very good. Thankfully, nothing horrible happening in my life right now. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
So today we're going to talk about your new special, which is out on Amazon Prime, and it's called Alas Motapa Ghabrahat.
Yes.
Which seems like a one-sentence summary of the last 2 years, doesn't it?
I mean, for me, it's the last 29 years of being alive. But yeah, especially the last 2 years. I've doubled down with the last 2 years.
Tell us about the special. Like, what was going through your head when you were writing it? Like, what were you trying to tackle?
I mean, honestly, it's about what I was going through at the time. And in many ways, remnants of it are still like happening right now. In 2018, I moved out of my parents' house, finally, and got my own little place where I was living. And then in the same year, I got into a relationship. And 2018-19 was the last time, 19 rather, was the last time I put out any stand-up material. So all of that material was old, and it wasn't about any of what's happening in my life. But yeah, it takes a little while to process things that are taking place in your life and to turn them into material. And it was a pretty natural thing for me to end up writing about my parents and my partner, because how Indian parents can tend to be, you know, how like overly protective they are of their children. So this whole moving out of the house thing, it's a big shift for them. And so there is friction that happens. And so when you're going through that, you tend to like channel that frustration in a healthier way than to like yell at them or something. So I just decided to write jokes about it. And at the same time, you know, it's really weird, because I come from a very sheltered family, and we're not the kinds of people who like to have too many experiences because we're constantly scared. And then I'm with a person who's adventurous and tends to look at the positive side of things, and learned a lot about being an adult from her, you know. So that's why the first half of the show is like points out the shortcomings with the life I used to live. And then the second half of the show looks at, you know, what could be possible if I wasn't, well, such a coward, you know. So yeah.
But you are taking steps now to get there.
I'm trying, yes.
So when did you record the special? Was it challenging? I'm assuming you recorded in the middle of between these two lockdowns that we had.
Yeah, to be honest, man, it was insanely challenging. It was the most difficult thing I've had to do in 10 years of doing stand-up. I recorded it on March the 7th, and 50 people in the audience, socially distanced, masked, all of that. The biggest problem I encountered with this show is that it's unlike any other hour of stand-up I've written, in that I don't get to tour all over India with it. I don't get to go to different parts of the world with it and perform to Indian people in all kinds of rooms around the world and know for a fact that the material is good. Like it works. I didn't even know all of the words to all of the jokes, to be honest with you. Like they weren't set in stone, which is a very, you know, new feeling for me. So I did 3 shows. That's why, in fact, if you watch the special, you'll notice that there are a couple of jumps, you know, because sometimes you want to take a part of a joke from one show and another part of the joke from another show. But I haven't used words that connect with each other really, because I just sort of set it up with however I can when I'm on stage. But I remember the punchlines, right? So it wasn't even because of not having as many live performances of it, you know, because of having to build an hour on Zoom predominantly, which again, it's a fucking nightmare, man, to do Zoom shows. It really is. I swear, it's like 5 times harder than a live show. But anyway, like all of those factors considered, this was a lot harder to do. And that's the reason why I chose to do 3 shows, because usually you just do the 2 shows when you know that, you know, every word is in its place and everything. You tend to do 2 shows, but I did 3 just to have a safeguard, and I'm glad I did that, because that really gave us multiple options for every joke.
I wanted to ask you about, how do you test material out on Zoom? I mean, how do you even get the sort of feedback that how did you go about it? How do you get the feedback that you need, obviously, to work on it?
It's the same for everyone. You put it through a few filters, I think. You write it, and then if you don't laugh sitting alone in your room, or if it doesn't at least make you chuckle or give you a sense of like lightness inside, or make you go, oh, that's funny, you tend to not do it. I mean, I tend to not do it. And but if I find that it has made me laugh and I am interested in it, then I will take it on stage and try to see if the thought works. You know, usually we take a new thought on stage, It's just the thought with maybe one punchline. You take it on stage, you see if it works. And if you can sort of manipulate it in a way where, use the right words and phrase it in a way where a room full of random people does get it, and they do laugh, and you have that moment of like collectively going, oh, that's fun. Then you sort of really, really work on it. And then you try to add angles and tags and stuff like that to it, because you know that the initial thought is working. So that hasn't changed, whether on Zoom or at live shows. That process has stayed the same since I started doing stand-up.
When you're putting out material, like I said, this special is largely about your parents and your girlfriend. So do you run it by, do they just wait in suspense? Or like, it's going to drop, I don't know what's going to happen.
So with my girlfriend, it's a lot easier because we're the same age. And she's like, yeah, say whatever you want. Just make sure that if you ever get recognized in public and I'm around, it's not awkward for me. And don't put up any pictures of me on your social media. So I can respect those boundaries. She's a private person, and that's how she likes to live. And I completely understand that. With my parents, there is a little bit of mental preparation that's required, to be honest. I would say that there's a joke I do about how they're proud and pissed off with how things have gone for me. And I think that wasn't an exaggeration. That's largely very true. They're pretty upset sometimes with the things I say, but then I've explained to them that this isn't mimicry, or this isn't like comedy from the 90s, which again, like, they say, my dad has told me in the past, you watch all these Hindi films, you've seen all these films and there's so much comedy in it, but somehow it's never as brutal as what you do. And why must you be this way? And I'm like, look, they make fun of disabled people. They make fun of fat people. They make fun of trans people and all of that. They make fun of women. And those are the places where I sort of draw a line, where I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. So it's all just about tastes and preferences. So once I explained these things to them, and I told them, listen, there is an element of exaggeration. There is a victim of every joke. That's how jokes work. I'm not up there to praise people. I'm not up there to tell people what amazing parents you guys are, And besides, you're never going to be at the mall and someone just points you out and says, oh, those are those parents that guy was talking about, right? That's never going to happen. Your privacy is maintained. So then once I explained that to them, they relaxed a little bit. Yeah.
So they've obviously, I'm guessing, seen this special now.
Yeah, a couple of months ago.
Yes. What is your dad's reaction to it?
Look, we haven't spoken about it. I think my mom plays. I think my mom plays that role of a buffer, between me and him. I called her up after the taping, and I was like, "Yeah, it went well, but आपको पता है कि आपको संभालना है, जो So she's like, "मुझे संभालना है मतलब?" I'm like, "I've been mentally preparing for this for 2 months, even before the taping. I worked as hard on my parents as I did on the special itself."
And so I'm guessing moving out would have helped in that situation. Otherwise,
yes,
you would have had
absolutely.
to move out anyway. Feel like.
If I hadn't moved out, the special would be 3 hours long. And there wouldn't be a joke about my girlfriend in there. There would just be all my parents,
But you tend to avoid social and political commentary, and you've avoided it largely in this special also. Is that just out of a sense of self-preservation, or are you just not interested in those topics?
I just feel like I know how much my current mental health can handle. It's a selfish decision. To be honest, it's like it affects me. When even criticism affects me. Not to say I sit in my house and I go, how dare anybody criticize me? But it really makes me introspect, and it really takes a few days out of my life when I feel like someone's made a valid point, or even if someone's made a point that I completely disagree with. To be honest, I just haven't sort of worked hard enough on myself to the point where I know that I can be immune to the kind of criticism that extremely political comedians receive. So yeah, I would say that I stay away from those topics because I've always used stand-up to feel better, And I always like when I'm on stage and I can see that the room is better than it was when I got on stage, right? And so when people's opinions are so widely polarized at a time like this, I don't know if I want to go there and cause weird situations to happen because, yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot,
I think it's something that comedians are talking about a bit more now. The sort of mental toll that this constant online abuse. You did manage to piss off the Bhajia fan. Or was it Bhajia or was it the MasterChef joke?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, look, this isn't a job that this isn't a natural job, Any popular, hate all of those words, but any person who is in front of the public in any capacity, that's not a natural job. That's not something a human being is supposed to be doing, And it is sort of a weird childhood and a lot of undiagnosed mental disorders if you want to be the guy that's on stage going, you all shut up and I'm going to talk for an hour, So already you're not going to be the kind of person who can take things in their stride. You are deeply affected and you're extremely dramatic, and you can sometimes see your own bullshit, and so that's the thing I feel with trolls as well. Is like, you said one thing to me, but you don't know the 100 things I say to myself. Like, nobody can troll me the way I troll myself. Like, you want to talk about how much you hate me? Like, I am the president of that club, So even with the whole bhajia thing, just to show that literally anything can piss people off. You can say anything, and there's going to be at least one person who's like, yeah, that didn't sit well with me. So if a person says they didn't find it funny, that's the rarest of rare occurrences. Mostly people are like, I am deeply affected by what you said about fried Indian street food. So yeah.
Yeah. No, even I'm like you said in the special about people coming up to you and taking offense on behalf of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think yesterday we shared this clip from Mohammad Sahil also, which is about the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, someone came up to him and said, "You're making jokes about your parents. That's bad." Oh no, it was you making jokes about yourself. That reflects badly on your parents. So at this point, I'm not sure what you can joke about.
Yeah. And then when you do self-deprecation, like, people will tell you, hey man, it's not that bad. Why are you coming down so hard on yourself? It's like, dude, because I will not file a case against me. That's why. And also, exaggeration is a very integral part of, like, every joke is a good observation followed by a good exaggeration, right? So I don't know. Beyond a certain point, I try not to think about it, because you can't go up to every individual audience member and explain to them the context of every word that you say. So you can only hope that most people who watch it know the intent behind it, know that it's only intended to make them laugh and entertain them.
So one of the other things that I noticed you avoided in the special, especially considering it's all about your life, is
whenever a question starts with what I avoided, I automatically get a little nervous.
No. You avoided like too many jokes about pandemic or lockdown.
Yeah.
I guess that was also expected. So was that like a conscious choice, or just?
If I had written any jokes about the pandemic, I would have done them. It wasn't a conscious choice at all. I don't think I'd come to terms with what had happened, and I don't think I still have. I find it very difficult to look at the situation and see and go like, hey, what can I get out of this? How can I mine this situation for comedy? Like, it's still very real, and I'm still like very, very aware of the fact that I'm protected by my blind luck, to be honest, that we've avoided the worst of this pandemic, my family and I. So I have ADHD, all right? And one of the things that happens to you when you have ADHD is that you get like significantly affected by everything. And so whether that's a couple of negative comments on the internet or a global pandemic, I'm going to take it a lot worse than your average balanced human being. So yeah, that's the reason why I think that's why like a lot of the things I write jokes about are like years old, because it takes time for me to process them and like be okay with them, I suppose.
When the first lockdown happened, after a while, once you settled it, I was expecting a barrage of sort of pandemic lockdown humor coming from Indian comics, and there has been a little, but not nearly as much as I expected. I'm guessing everyone's still processing.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I'm glad there aren't any pandemic jokes, because I shot the special at a time where the second wave hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And then the second wave being as devastating as it was, I wouldn't want the special to look like I'm making light of a situation where people are losing family members and stuff, So in hindsight, I guess that like I was lucky that worked in my favor.
So now moving on from the special, you've also been dropping some hints in interviews that you're kind of looking at expanding beyond just doing stand-up. I think everyone has had to consider that given the couple of years we've had. So can you tell us what you've got in the pipeline in the future?
So as of now, I'm not really at liberty to disclose like stuff that I'm working on, because obviously there are like different parties or like whatever involved. See, look, it's always going to be stand-up first for me. And it's always going to be about like, the eternal conundrum is the same, like the special released. And one day before it released, I was already back at the Habitat because the lockdown had opened up with 20 new minutes of really, really loose material. Eating shit in front of, 20 vaccinated people, because that's what I love doing, right? Just reading them off a piece of paper and going, yeah, I know that there aren't any punchlines in this. Just watch the special tomorrow. It'll come out. Hopefully you like it, but I'm trying to work out new material here. So it's always going to be about stand-up. I think that there are ideas that I have that I can't necessarily communicate through stand-up the way I can through other things. And that's why I'm interested. That's not to say I'm any good at them, or that anybody should take that risk with me. But I'm just going to try. I'm just going to try to like improve my skills all around as a comedy writer. And and then see what happens. There isn't anything too concrete yet, but yeah, there might be other stuff outside of stand-up sometime in the future.
So in that sense, did the lockdown and the pandemic kind of give you the space to explore more, learn content creation beyond the stage?
Yeah, man. Like I found that I had sort of started subconsciously do something that I personally was very against. When I would watch comedians try to replicate what has already worked for them, it wouldn't sit well with me. And now, because of my YouTube videos getting some attention, and because of me getting a fair amount of work from them, I realized that it's not because those comedians are lazy or they don't want. It's just you get so much work and you have to do so many things that there isn't time to reflect. And you often think you're doing the right thing, but there just isn't the time. You're doing 20 shows a month, traveling to 20 cities. By the time you come back, you're exhausted and sitting like a zombie in front of a PlayStation, So because that you really have the mental energy to do, because it is a tiring job to tour and stuff. So while I'd still say that I would find large parts of it funny, and I know that the audience would resonate with it, but it wasn't like a movement. It wasn't a step forward. It was a step sideways. And so with the pandemic coming in, it actually gave me the time to introspect and to learn a little bit more and to be like, what's actually authentic? Like, what do you really want to talk about? And, what can you talk about and get through some stuff on stage, like where you don't have to then sit and think about relatability. You just have to be the person that you are. And then luckily everybody else is also people. So, they'll hopefully like it.
Hopefully they're all people. I still think some of them are lizards. But so the special has been out for a few days now. How has the response been?
Honestly, by the time you're done making something like this and you're putting it out, you don't know whether it's any good. You really don't, because you've gone through every emotional extreme that you possibly can, to thinking, hey, this is actually, to being like, I don't know, face is weird and I don't know. You go through all of those feelings, and then I put it out, and to be honest, I haven't heard anything negative about it yet from anybody. Now, that could just be that people who didn't like it don't want to bother with telling me, but by and large, all the feedback that's reached me and everything I've seen on the internet has been pretty positive. And I'm not the sort of person who can abstain from the internet at a time like this. Like, I read everything. And yeah, it's been pretty positive overall. So you just realize how lucky you are, honestly, that people are so gracious and so overwhelmingly kind that if you do your job, they're grateful for it. People are saying things like, thank you for making this. And I'm like, hey, I was rewarded sufficiently for the effort I put in. I'm the beneficiary of this, not you guys. Don't thank me. It makes me feel worse. I did it literally to further my own career in life. It was a deeply selfish move. That's it. But yeah, people are that overwhelmingly kind. And so, yeah, it does make your day. And in my case, it's made the last 3 or 4 of my days. Yeah.
It's an important reminder to have at a time where the relationship between comedian and audience is it's a bit fraught. There are some landmines around the way that we didn't see earlier. That's all the time we have for today's episode. Thank you so much for coming on, Karunesh. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And I really love the work that DeadAnt has been doing. And if anybody's watching this and somehow does not follow DeadAnt, just know that something awful happened recently and their 50,000 follower plus Instagram page got taken down. So please follow this page and try to get as many people to do that as possible, because yeah, it's pretty legit. All the news about comedy and stuff, you'll find it here.
All right. Thank you.